Hey everyone, it's Austin and welcome back to the channel. It's day 192 on my journey to 2000, where today I have another special episode for you guys. I will be reviewing game 2 of my over-the-board tournament this past weekend, the 61st Baltimore Open. So without further ado, let's swap the scene, flip on some tunes, and begin the context. So round 2, like I said, I had won round 1. Spoiler, if you haven't watched the previous video, please go ahead and go watch that. And now I'm matched against Caleb Yo, another awesome young man who's rated 1193, and my USCF is only 1012. I have the black pieces, which is why we're looking at it from this direction. And let's get started. He plays e4, so this is a game in 45 round. So 45 minutes per side with a 5-second delay. So e4, c6, d4, d5. He chooses to play the advanced caro. My weapon of choice is bishop f5. I haven't really gotten into the Botvinnik carls or anything like that, so I'm still sticking with the main line for now. He plays knight f3, super common, e6, and he goes for the light squared bishop trade immediately, which is just known to be very comfortable for black, so I'm good with this. I trade, he takes back with the queen, and I play c5. This is all very, very common. You guys have probably seen this plenty of times on the channel before. So he chooses to defend with c3, which I think is very thematic. And now I follow up naturally with knight c6, putting more pressure on the center, on the d4 square. So in this position, I've seen most commonly probably bishop e3 or castles, just to continue defending that d4 pawn, or to just continue development. So he goes with castles, and now what I will most often do is take in the center, so that way my plan is to go knight ge7, and when I do, to go knight f5, I don't want to block in my dark square bishop and limit the vision of the bishop's the bishop to be able to see the c5 square. So like, for example, if I just go here right away, he just takes, and I might end up being able to win that pawn back, but it's kind of like, why go through that? So I will typically take, he plays c takes, and now I go knight ge7 to continue my plan. He goes knight c3, which makes perfect sense. He played flexible opening moves such that when I made this move, he was able to develop his knight to the most accurate square. I go knight f5, and he goes knight back to e2, and this move kind of took me by surprise. I was kind of like, I'm used to seeing in e4 positions where you're rotating the knight through e2 to get to g3, building up an attack on the king side, but it felt kind of early, and I was just kind of like, okay, well, it's not threatening anything. It is over defending the pawn, so I'm just going to continue my development and be normal. So I go bishop e7. It's where the bishop always goes in these positions, and then he plays a3, and I was thinking okay, that's an awesome prophylactic move. My idea ultimately in the Caro-Kann is to expand on the queen side, play on the queen side. My knight can no longer go to b4, which is actually not great for me. My knight loves to go to b4 to hit the c2 square, and my only other option now is to perhaps rotate through a5 to get to c4, putting pressure on the b2 and d2 squares. So I'm, not thinking about it too much. I'm like, obviously my next move is just castle. Those are all good things to think about for the future, but I'm like, we're kind of playing fast through the opening. It's just getting everything developed, going for a pretty decent game here. Now he plays b4, and I'm thinking oh man, he's really limiting my play on the queen side. That's where I need to play my game. and he's not really letting me play my game on the queen side. So I'm thinking like, you know, what can I do? I can't go a5. He just plays b5, and that move will always be defended by the queen. So I couldn't even consider queen b6 to go a5. He just pushes, it'll always be defended. So I was thinking about like a6, knight a7, like goofy stuff, and then I was just like, all right, well, I'm really not sure yet. Let's just improve my rook. I know that this rook like always goes on c8. It's a no-nonsense move to try to put some control on the open file, so let's start with that move and see what he does. So now he actually fianchettos the dark squared bishop, which I thought was not super common. I didn't think it was bad or anything, but I'm like, okay, that's just something that I'll have to keep in mind moving forward, because it's not what I'm used to playing against, and I might have to calculate some interesting things along this diagonal. So now is probably when I started having my first big think, and I was like, you know, like what actually is my plan here? Because he's done an excellent job pretty much negating my queenside play. And in terms of pawn breaks, you know, playing a6, b5 seems like it would be pretty useless. I mean, I'd have to... I'm trying to think of how I could even get to the c4 square for it to be helpful, and then if I did, he doesn't have many things. He can just defend the bishop or move the bishop out of the way. Might not even be good to get to the c4 square, so I kind of was like, well, realizing that another common pawn break in the Caro-Kann is f6. So I was kind of sitting here and I was thinking about f6. And I was thinking that it's just my best plan. You know, I think I've said this in the past, at least I think I have. Maybe I even said it yesterday. Not really sure what my plan is here, but a lot of times it's better to have a bad plan than no plan at all. So I start thinking about ways that I can kind of play more on the king side. So after some thought, I played f6. Now, I definitely think that his best move is to take. And although it might seem, you know, good for me to open up my f file and good for me to, you know, get my bishop out and those kinds of things, ultimately I think it would be much better for him because he has access to this backward e6 pawn. And that's like one of the biggest dangers of playing f6 in these structures, is that e6 will get so weak. And if you drop the e6 pawn, half the time it's going to come with a check on your king. So it's like, you know, you really got to be careful when you're playing this. So I was fully expecting takes, and he goes knight g3. So I'm thinking like, okay, this is awesome for me. I now have the chance to take him, so that way he'll end up with a pawn on e5 and then blocking his vision of my weak e6 pawn. I'm like, this is awesome. So I decide to take first to ruin his structure, and then, you know, he recaptures with the f pawn, opening up the rook, and I take in the center. He takes back with the knight, and like I said, my whole idea here was to get this weak isolated pawn while simultaneously using that weak isolated pawn to cover up my weakness. So that's what I do. And now here I'm just like, same kind of thing. I don't feel like I have a very strong plan. So I started thinking some more. Still seeing no good ideas on the queen side. Still not seeing like anything. So I play queen c7. Just putting some pressure on this pawn, connecting my rooks, and putting more pressure on the file. Now, I really don't think that this is a very good move. You know, he can immediately counteract the pressure that I've just placed on this file by just doing that. And suddenly it's like, okay, I basically just wasted a tempo, and there's a potential that he can force a trade of rooks in a less than favorable way for me. So he takes on f8 first, I recapture with the rook, and then he does it. And I'm like, oh geez, you know, like, I wasted time. I know queen b6 is a very common move, so without much thought, unfortunately, I just go ahead and play this move. And I was not thinking about the bishop being able to come in and block, which not only is a good resource for him, but it's just flat out a killer move, because now my queen is skewered to the pawn, so it's kind of like, you know, I can't go anywhere on the c-file. I don't want to go queen a6 to defend the pawn and then force a queen trade and end up with double isolated a pawns. Like, that's, I knew that that wasn't right. So I sat here for a while and I was like, ah, God, I'm just playing so poorly. I'm just not really thinking my plans through very well. But it is just a pawn, so, you know, let's do our best here. And I play queen d8, thinking that, you know, if he takes the pawn, I have potential to go queen a8. I have potential to, like, support my bishop going out this way. You know, just, it seems like the best idea, and then potentially being able to rotate back through d7 after this to kind of play more on the light squares felt better. So naturally he does take here, and I continue with the latter plan that I just explained, queen d7. I'm thinking, okay, you know, maybe I can get in with my queen a little bit, put my bishop out here, and just try to, like, infiltrate, get some of the pieces aligned, you know, this whole thing. So now I'm just waiting to see what he's going to play, and he goes bishop back to c5. And I saw this move, and I was thinking at first, you know, like, oh, that seems like a really strong move, putting the bishop on a good square and pretty much forcing a trade of bishops, because I can't move my bishop, because then obviously my rook would hang. But I saw rook c8, which pins the bishop to his rook, and instantly, you know, the rook is hanging back there, so now I have a lot of pressure on this pin. And it suddenly felt like I was getting a good amount of counterplay for the pawn. So I'm thinking, like, okay, you know, he's probably going to defend the rook somehow. Maybe like queen d2. Maybe like, probably not, you know, you wouldn't want to put the queen in front of the rook, because obviously, even if you have enough firepower lined up to defend, so to speak, the queen is worth more than the rook. So it's still an absolute, or it's still a pin. So I was thinking, okay, you know, he's going to defend it. I'm going to put more pressure, and then I'm going to play b6 and win his piece. So he moves his rook up off the back rank, which defends his piece. So I'm thinking, okay, now I just add another attacker, and then I don't see what he's going to do. You know, like, how is he going to defend the bishop? Or how is he going to get out of the pin, I should say. So he goes rook c3, and you'll find, like, the commonality in my mistakes of this game, or at least what I'm thinking is my mistakes. Again, I haven't analyzed the game super deeply yet. The common thread between my mistakes is that I have a plan, and I kind of just play it without thinking about the intermediate things that have changed. So my plan was to put my queen in front of my rook to put more pressure on the pinned piece, and then play b6 to win his bishop, because the pieces behind cannot be defended enough times. So I play b6, and I'll apologize now. For whatever reason, I can't remove the miss symbol in these analyses. All the other symbols and all the other analysis can be removed, but you kind of already get the idea by the way that I'm talking that this is just it's a miss. He just rocks the bishop back to d4, opening up an attack on my queen while simultaneously defending the rook. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I just played this too fast. I wasn't even thinking. And I'm thinking, you know, it's even worse, because no matter where I move my queen to defend the rook, he just takes with check, forces a trade, and then picks up a second pawn. He's going to have two outside pass pawns, and I'm cooked. Like, I'm just absolutely toast here. So I decide to put my queen there, and I'm fully expecting him to take, but he brings the king, which gives me an opportunity to get out of this, rook stare off, and not hang a second pawn. So immediately, the first thing that pops into mind is check. So I just play it without really thinking too much about what other moves could be played. I just didn't want the trade to happen. I didn't want the trade to happen and then drop that second pawn. So again, a case of just kind of playing things quickly without thinking them through too much. He brings the king more towards the center, which I thought was a little bit shocking. I definitely have enough pieces on the board to be dangerous to his king. So I was, again, thinking, I gotta find a way to, like, converge my pieces and put some pressure on this king. But first, I hate that this pawn is hanging, and I would love to be able to negate the forward movement of his pawns. So b5. And from here, again, I'm thinking of ways to put pressure on his king. Waiting to see what he plays. And he goes queen behind the rook. Intentionality very clear here. He wants to come in, and this would win a piece off the bat, because I wouldn't be able to defend the bishop with the queen if this was his move again. So I'm thinking, okay, let me move my bishop out of the way, and if he does this, then I will go here and threaten a pawn. And then if he takes, if he comes up and hits my queen, then I take this pawn, he takes that pawn, I take this pawn, and at least we have a game. I'm not just dropping pieces and stuff. That's what I calculated, at least. So I go bishop out to g5, just thinking that I really want to put pressure on this king. You can already see how I'm kind of taking up a lot of squares around the king. That's what I want here. So he ends up swinging the rook around because he felt that pressure on his king, I think. And I'm like, okay, this is good. I kind of got him on the back foot a little bit. I'm going to go rook c8 now that he gave me the opportunity to look at his queen. And he goes back, and I'm thinking, like, man, I'm down a pawn. You want to draw? You want to draw? But now he does this. Bishop c5. And I'm thinking, like, something is not right here. I'm like, this just does not make sense. Yes, you're hitting my rook. Yes, I don't have many squares to put it. I think getting off the back rank would be a very bad thing to do for my king safety. And, my queen's on the 7th rank undefended. So let's say I, like, go here, and he could have some condition where he can come in with his rook check. King comes to the 7th rank. Oops. Check on the king, attack on the queen. And, I think it's very bad for king safety to evacuate the back rank here. So I keep thinking, and I'm like, all right, well, he's attacking my rook. I can move the rook, or I can try to attack something greater. And I'm also seeing, like, this diagonal potentially opening. So there's not really a way for me to hint at it without showing you the move, but I calculated for a while what could potentially happen if I play d4. So I'm thinking, okay, d4 takes, and suddenly I'm up a piece for a pawn. Well, total material would be a piece for 2 pawns. So I'm like, okay, that's sick. What if I push and he takes with the bishop? Then I'm calculating check. If the king comes forward, he just gets mated. And then I'm pretty sure that, like, all lines that I calculated there led to mate. Here takes, check, king back. We already know that that's checkmate. So I was thinking, like, oh my god, d4 is the saving grace here. So I play it, And I'm thinking, like, what is he going to play? What is he going to play? Like, please take the pawn with your bishop, basically, because a lot of the lines that I calculated there seemed so promising for me. But no, very strong player plays rook f3, showing a lot of restraint here. And then I was thinking, like, all right, I got to get more pressure, I would love to be able to give this check. You know, this pawn is loose. I need to get my queen into the game. And now I have this passed pawn that could prove to be very valuable for me. So I would also want to protect that. So thinking about those things logically, I was thinking one move ahead, but I also, you know, my rook here, I don't want a rook trade. I'm down material, and I think if I trade rooks here, it's much better for him. He'll probably end up picking up the pawn, and then he's up 2 pawns, and it's just too much. So I go back in for the pin, also protecting the pawn that way, because now he can't take. And I'm like, all right, let's see what he plays here. Queen d3, and so he's attacking the pawn twice. So naturally, with the things that I previously said, trying to put pressure on this weakness, trying to infiltrate and all these things, queen d5. So I'm like, okay, let's see what happens here. So he takes this pawn, and I'm like, man, but that's not where the action is. You don't have any pressure on my back rank right now with the queen. Yes, you have this scary convergence of these 2 pieces, but this pawn is hanging with check. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I have other checks too. Sorry, I have a2 check, I have queen e4 check. I'm like, no, this can't be it, this can't be it. So I decide, after calculating some of this, to take on e5 with check. And I'm thinking, like, you know, I'm gonna have 2 passed pawns in the center, and his king is in the center. And I have all this pressure barreling down the center of the board. All I need to do is just not hang my rook and not hang this kind of thing. So he goes king here, king to f2, and I calculated for a while bishop e3. I was thinking, okay, bishop e3, and I just didn't see something promising after just simply going to king f1. I was thinking king f1, and it's like, now what? I don't have any checks. You know, there's a lot of pressure on me as well. My king isn't necessarily super safe. You know, obviously it would be great if he took, and then, you know, like, got himself, well, that wouldn't be anything because the bishop covers that square, but if he took, I would probably have the potential to, you know, push my passed pawn and those kinds of things. But there's no way that he's going to take. He's too good. So I just did not see anything after king f1. So instead, I decided to play bishop here, threatening checkmate, while also, like, you know, controlling some more squares. Basically just this square. And this was a part where I was a little panicky. I was just kind of like, you know, I don't see what to do. I don't see what to do. It doesn't seem right, but I don't see what to do. So I just, boom, played this move. And then he plays queen e1, which kind of just defends everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I don't see now what I'm supposed to do. I don't see a clear path forward. So I thought some more, and I decided to give check now that his king can't go here. So I do. And he moves the king, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this has to be good. This has to be good, right? And I'm thinking about what discoveries I can play. I can't win anything from it. So I decide to give bishop g5, discovered check. And then he runs the king to the back rank where it's actually extremely safe. And I just think, okay, well, I need to defend this pawn. But I also, like, most importantly, you know, he's got all this ammo pointed at the f8 square. You know, he can sack and win the game right now. So let's go here, cover up their vision of that square, and then see what he does next. He goes queen d3, blockading the pawn, putting more pressure on the pawn. So I go queen d5, opening up this defense of the d4 pawn while simultaneously like centralizing my queen. And this just felt like a good move to play, you know, again, maybe trying to get in on the light squares, those kinds of things. And then he offers a queen trade. And I'm like, okay, but I have 2 passed pawns in the center of the board and your king is right there. So it's worth noting that at this point, and this is actually like a really big point of the game. This is a really important point to make. During this game, he had used a lot more time than me. At this point, he was down to like 20 seconds on the clock, and he started playing very fast. Obviously, he needs to. He's basically playing on the 5-second delay, not recording moves anymore or anything. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going to trade the queens, and then I'm going to play solidly, and I'm going to win on the clock, because naturally he's going to have to play fast, and he'll make a mistake. But unfortunately, the way that I do this is that I start playing very fast as well. For no reason. I have like 20 minutes on my clock, still playing very fast to kind of try to put pressure on his. This is not what you want to do. This is not what you want to do. I've done this in tournaments in the past. I know it's not what you're supposed to do, but it's just like, you're just in that moment and you're thinking like, no, I gotta play fast, I gotta play fast. So I trade. He plays rook takes, and then I'm like, all right, defend the passer, start pushing the passers. So he starts going with his pawns, and the first thing he plays is b5, and he hangs his bishop, and I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm gonna win. I'm putting pressure on his clock, and so he's down on the clock, I'm up a piece, and like everything feels great here. And so the next couple moves aren't super accurate because, again, we stopped recording. He was less than 5 minutes on his clock, so technically we didn't have to continue recording. I kind of wish that I did, but here's what I'll basically tell you. He has 2 outside passed pawns. I have 2 passed pawns in the center of the board. I'm up a piece, but this is so tricky to win for black. And in the spirit of playing fast, you know, let's say that he does that. I don't remember if he played this or if he played this. Either way, I know that what I played was rook back, and then I instantly realized that like this could not be the right move. I started calculating, you know, like he's gonna push his pawns and I'm not gonna be able to stop it. So I start blitzing out moves, and he starts blitzing out moves, and to make a long story short, I ended up blundering the piece back, and I ended up blundering a rook trade where he was able to, you know, basically my king was here and my rook was here, and he was able to give check on like this square or something and force a rook trade. And, you know, that's it. He's just pushing his pawns and I'm toast, so I resigned. So, I mean, this was one of these things where this was extremely upsetting to me. I was like, oh my god, you know, I was winning, you know, I was losing, and then I had chances, and then I was winning because I did a good job putting pressure on his clock, but then I made the mistake of just playing too fast when I didn't need to. But I'm excited to look at this endgame together because I think that it has the potential to be very instructive. You know, we have an extra piece for a pawn here, but again, it really boils down to 2 passers versus 2 passers, king position, and the fact that his pawns are just further away from my king, and it felt like they were closer to queening. It ended up feeling like it was actually an advantage that his king was in the center of the board, which, you know, when you think about it, they always say in endgames to centralize your king, so it just makes sense that it would be better for him, but I wasn't thinking about that in the game. I was thinking in the game that it would be a weakness for him because I had the potential to be pushing with checks and things, but the 2 pawns can't push on their own. They need support from other pieces in order to be able to give those kinds of checks. So it was just an incorrect thought that I had, plain and simple. Okay, so all of that rambling and talking aside, oh my god, I've been talking about this game for 30 minutes. So, oh my god. Yeah, this was a crazy one. What can I say? Let's get into the analysis. So, we all know that this is like a standard position. Even this is a very standard position. Bishop d3 isn't most often played. Trading is the best idea for me, and c5 is the best idea for me. c3 is great. Knight c6 isn't as good. For reasons I don't fully understand. I think in general, it's pretty common that the knights do this kind of a dance. So that way you really have like full control over the c5 square, but at my level, I find it very advantageous to position your knights like this to put pressure on the d4 square. You guys don't even know, or perhaps you do because you've watched the channel enough. I've won so many games just putting pressure on the d4 square and winning a pawn. And it's like, this pawn is like the keystone of the position. If we win this, like, e5 is falling, the position's falling apart. You get, you know, a passed pawn in the center of the board, and you're just cooking your opponent. So this isn't great. a6 is better. g3. No, that doesn't make sense. Bishop g5. I've seen this move plenty of times. Let's see. Let's just say h3. Now c takes. Not really getting a strong impression of what the idea here. h6 makes more sense to prevent this move. It was kind of like our game from yesterday, where you're just limiting the scope of where you can develop the bishop. And this dark square diagonal is usually pretty weak in the Caro-Kann, or it can lead to some problems, that's for sure. But anyway, I take, and then knight ge7 is best. And we're like, it's pretty much equal here. Sorry, I realized that I don't have the eval on. Let me turn on the eval bar. So it's pretty much even here. I go knight f5. Naturally, a6 is better. So let's look at this line. a6, bishop d2, knight f5, a3, knight a5 before he can play b4. This kind of makes sense. And we're preventing his knight from coming in. This seems logical. Knight b3 seems very natural here. Rook c8 also good. Okay, but what if rook c8, now b4? Now we have a permanent square on c5. Or sorry, c4, and we're just kind of vibing. This makes sense. Okay, so executing a queenside plan a little bit earlier seems like something I really missed out on here. So a5 sooner. Queen b6. Yeah, so I just needed to play on the queen side sooner. Even a6 here. Give it 1 second to think, 1 second to think. Let's look at this sample line. Rook a2, now f6. Hitting the pawn, defending. Rook swings for more pressure. All this pressure. Okay, but isn't that a free pawn? Rook takes e6, knight's hanging as well. Bishop takes d4. Defending the knight. And you can't take because of this. Rook e2. Just getting out of the way, but hold up, what if... Don't you have another move here? Yeah, pretty crazy sample line. Basically just exploding the center. Everything's still equal, but regardless, I play f6 now. Still floating around equal. This wasn't the best move, and it seems like I correctly evaluated that this position was better for me. So we're at -1 here. I just needed to have a good plan, and queen c7 was not the plan. So it wants a5, but I don't understand. Why not just b5? So if b5, okay, this is really bad now. Why is this so bad? Rook takes. Rook takes. Queen, now queen c7. I don't understand. Queen b6 makes so much more sense. And now with this, now that his pawn isn't on b4, I can come in with the bishop. So queen d4, or sorry, bishop d4. Oh, wow. So how much worse is it if I just block it? Yeah, it's a difference of like 2 points. I would have found that in the game, guaranteed, but, you know, in this analysis where I'm trying to think quickly because I'm on camera. Makes sense. So queen b6. What is his actual best move? King h1. Queen c5. Really? Queen c5. Now what if here? Queen c4, threatening a queen trade. And if he takes, rook takes, and the bishop is hanging and the pawn's hanging, but what about here? Bishop b2, rook c2, naturally. Bishop can come back still defending. a4. Rook a2 also. Wow, just putting the pressure on, but none of that happened, obviously. Queen c7 wasn't the move. a5, in order to basically split up the queenside pawns and try to pick them off, is the general idea. So bishop takes was better. I mean, that's a weird move. And I think this was another, yeah. I would go as far as to say that this is a mistake and not an inaccuracy. Queen d7 makes a lot more sense. That's where I ended up going. So bishop d4, best move. Oh, look at that. Queen d8, best move. Great move. Bishop takes, and it liked my other plan of queen a8 more. But it's just +1 here. Like, obviously he won a pawn. He goes there. So trading is better. Okay. Trades here. Then what? b6. Okay, can't use that outpost for the rook. Rook c1. d4. This makes more sense to me. After takes. Yeah, this is borderline equal here. h3, giving loft. Queen c1 check anyway. King f2. And this is just a... This looks like it's just a draw. Hitting everything and threatening checks here. Okay, so this makes... Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Queen a4 was better than queen c7. And now, yeah, this was just a miss, plain and simple. And this is one line that I analyzed on my own. Basically, we can just take here because you're still hitting the rook. So, like, if this, you know, you're just dropping the soap here. You know, this is mate on the next move if you're not careful. So, yeah, the best move here is to sack the frickin' queen. So that pawn is just free. We needed to just take it. And then his best move is just to give loft. And now we take. And I mean, I would probably just take here. Yeah, practically speaking, I would probably take, just alleviate the tension. I would probably take a second time. And then I would probably start giving checks to try to pick up that pawn. Or force a queen trade. d4 here. Oh, beautiful move. Yeah, d4 is great here. Queen c4. Queen e... Yeah, I mean, we're just winning everything here, right? You can't take this pawn because the e-pawn is hanging with check. But I would just push the pawn. I mean, everything's defended. Yeah, king h2. Yeah, just d3. It wants c6. Yeah, I mean, we're taking that. Queen takes. Threatening mate. King up to f7. And now it looks like we might be headed towards the draw with some sort of perpetual. Queen c7 check. Probably king g6, right? King g6, queen c3. Blocking. Yeah, you can't push because it's pinned. h5. Oh, h5 is tough. I would be so interested in playing like queen e2 or something. Queen c4. Still just pinning. Just pinning. Man, I don't know what I would do here. I'd probably bring the other pawn. And no, you can't even do that. If you bring the other pawn, it's just checks on the e6 square. Wow, this is tough. Can't go here. Just takes. Gotta find some way to make progress without dropping the pawn and without dropping checks. So it's really just, it really is h5 or something to that effect to give the king some opportunity to move around, potentially block checks with the pawns. That's crazy. So anyway, none of that happened. Bishop d4. I don't see how this was an inaccuracy. Okay, because this puts even more pressure. Like, guarantees the loss of the pawn, but I mean, is this not just so much better for white? Yeah, now it's saying that's +3. I think that's just the computer screwing up a little bit there. Okay, but not this move, because now check is scary. Okay, so it wanted h4 first. And now bishop d8 defending the pawn. Or this, whatever. Sometimes what the engine says to start isn't the best. So here, I needed to find, it looks like queen c7 after this. Rook c7. And now if you take, I'm still defending the pawn. And h4 is still great. And now rook takes, whatever. Queen takes. b5. King e2. I feel like I'm getting roasted here. Yeah, I mean, it's +1, but it feels so much worse than that. I mean, what is bishop d8? Bishop d8 to rotate here, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's just an endgame, so just trying to, like, squirm around. Yeah, this definitely felt like an inaccuracy. Best move. Okay, so this was a mistake. I needed to go rook c4. Hitting the bishop. And if he takes, then what? D takes, threatening this pawn while also securing myself another passed pawn. Or, well, the same passed pawn, just moved around. Wow. His best move here is king f2. And then we're just centralizing. Yeah, I mean, queen c3 seems like the only logical thing to play, and then it's like, okay, how do you make progress? h6. I mean, what is h6, though? It's just equal. So this, I didn't do that. I went over here, which is a mistake. This is a miss. Let's go. That feels really good. d4 felt like a very, very hard move to find. I really had to sit there and think for a while. Rook f3, he thought for a while, found the best move. That's awesome. Rook d8 was better, just to defend the pawn outright without tactics. And now centralizing this, and I knew that this was a miss. And I already analyzed this a little bit too. So basically these two checks were much better than the one that I gave because we're infiltrating on the light squares. And that's what we need. We have a dark square bishop. We need to be able to control the other color complex if we're going to get in with our queen. Is basically the takeaway from what I analyzed. But this is a miss because I did have bishop e3 check, even though I didn't see it. But let's quickly review what to play if king f1. If king f1, it just says rook e4, queen e4, and now queen c4. Yeah, but that's not stopping check. King e2. b2 check, but isn't he coming forward? King d3. Take a pawn for our trouble. If you come forward, let's just say for discussion. Queen a8 check. Wow, that's a hard check to see. And the best move is more to go back. And in this case, it's rook b2 check. Basically, you just need to find the right checks here. You need to calculate very accurately, it feels like. Wow, really? Rook d8? Oh my god, that's so scary. Even that move doesn't make any sense. So let's see why this isn't an accuracy. Obviously, you're taking with check. King h8. Queen e7. Hitting the rook. Threatening back rank mate. And here we give b1 check, forcing the king outwards. Away from that little nook that he was in. Queen a2 check. Coming back, it looks like the point is the pressure on the pawn. This check makes more sense, also keeping him off of this light square. King b5, rook b8 check now. Wow, bishop b6 to block. What about this check? It wants this one. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I know that this is like so much, but it basically just looks like we need to find the right checks, and that needs to be a crazy bit of analysis. But anyway, I took here, and we did have this check, and then this was an inaccuracy. He just needed to go back. But how does it, like, if we have check, he just blocks with the rook, and it's defended by the queen. So there's just nothing there. So he goes there. Now bishop e3. This is a draw, and this is a blunder. Wow, this is a blunder. Oh, because of d3 check. Discovering an attack there. So king takes d3, best move. Rook d8 check. And now the floodgates are opening. Now that the rook can get into the game, it's like all over for Buddy Boy. And here again, it just looks like finding the right checks. Sorry, I played the wrong move there. Rook d3 check. All because we have this. And queen takes is the best move, sacking the queen. Because if you go here, it's mate in 5. Pause the video, mate in 5. Just kidding. Rook c6. Block with the pawn. Now give this check. Bishop a7. Just give everything up. Oh my god, seriously coming back for this check? What if we take it? No, yeah, this makes more sense. Here. Yeah, and then it's just mate. Nice. Yeah, so I dang, that sucks. If I found d3 and I wasn't trying to play so fast. It just is what it is, though. Oh, here you go. That's a great move. So even here, it's equal. Trading's bad. Blunder. And here's the part that's crazy. And I already looked at this a little bit. to be able to tell you guys a little bit about it. Oh my god, we're 50 minutes into the video. So, the most natural move, defending the back rank, the promotion rank, it's the wrong way to go. You need to start pushing. E4, you know, I want to try to look at one of these sample lines, but it's not showing up. E4, B6, bishop E5, defending the promotion square. King F7, King D2, covering up. Sacking a pawn, sacking the rook, sacking everything for promotion. And now we end up trading off the passed pawns. So basically, I was trying to blockade with my rook alone, which just doesn't work because it's two passed pawns. So what I needed to do was go for active counterplay. And then when he was forced to have his rook defend, only then can my rook go in and win the passed pawns with the help of the bishop. That's just a random example of how it's drawn. But yeah, basically this move was drawing. If I found the correct continuation, I could have had a draw, but it ended up being that he pushed his pawns like basically to the 7th and 6th rank. And I just got cooked. He played so well. There's nothing that I can really say. So overall, this video has been very exhausting to make. Hopefully my incoherent ramblings have made some sort of some semblance of sense to you guys. I would say my takeaways from this game are that I know that I need to play on the queen side in the Caro-Kann, so I need to play on the queen side sooner before he shuts it down like this. That's definitely one thing. I played positionally very well here. Always, like, you know, need to spend this time to come up with a plan. These 3 or 4 moves in the middle game here was purely just playing too fast, not thinking enough. Same thing here. Even when I had my chance to start coming back, playing too fast, not thinking enough. Playing too fast, not thinking enough. Playing too fast, not thinking enough. Thinking enough, finding a very hard move, or at least in my opinion, a hard move. This one's hard to say. I mean, it's so hard to not take the pawn. So hard not to take the pawn there. This one probably could have been calculated better. Yeah, I needed to find this move. This is me just playing too fast and not looking at all my potential, like... You need to look at checks, captures, attacks, and that's just what I needed to do here. So, like, if he plays this, it's just mate. If he plays this, then I get to mate him. So he really needs to take, and then it's just boom. You're just getting hunted. So this is helpful to understand as well in this type of a position. So the rook and the piece are only equivalent to the passed pawns. So that's why I need to make sure that I trade them. I thought that my passed pawns were stronger. It was just a misevaluation, like just a blatant misunderstanding of the situation that I was in. So anyway, today's video, it looks like we're going on 55 minutes right now, but this was very good information. I mean, like, if we swap full screen one time, like, this is all the stuff that we looked at, all these lines and understanding the different ideas and everything. It all felt very helpful to me. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. If you've made it this far into the video, make sure to like and subscribe. I really appreciate your support. Yesterday's video for the recap has done awesome. So just to summarize, we're going into round 3 for tomorrow's video, and so far I'm 1-1 in the 5-round tournament. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.